the channel. I understand this Thanksgiving week, many people will be busy. They will not be part and parcel of what we do here, but that's quite all right because it'll still be sitting here waiting for everyone to absorb as they will. Now, of course, today is World Building Wednesday, and we, as most things go, we always blend our subject matter all week long from Monster Monday and Discord Tuesday, and of course there's be elements from uh, tomorrow, Thanksgiving Day here in the States, which is for our channel, Third Pillar Thursday, and of course Future Friday. No, don't tell me this sounds bad. I'm getting good pops. No. Anyway, um, just let me know if it continues because my everything seems to be a-okay on my end. Um, all right, no problem. So this week, this subject today on World Building Wednesday, let's come up with some reasons for the events that lead up to, pre, post, and during the Thanksgiving holiday birth. Okay, so let's come up with some reasons why we would want to leave a place we know so well, a place that should be a safe haven for us. And when I say us, it could be a handful of people, protagonists, player characters. It could be us in terms of a group of people, 20 to 50 individuals that are um, maybe separated from the larger community. It might be us, as in Battlestar Galactica, like the entire all of society has to leave their home to go wander and leave and try to find another place across the vast ocean of water, stars, dimensions, or whatever the case may be. I'm thinking now, and of course, we have for those of you out there that are history buffs, of course, you know many things. There, we talked about famine is an idea, um, persecution, warranted or not, by very powerful government institutions, nobility, a desire to see things change. Maybe there's something extremely decadent in the um, in how people live. Maybe there's some kind of stagnation, and that stagnation could be, hey, Pelora, hey, hey, hey. Maybe that stagnation could be economic stagnation, meaning there's no upward mobility. There's only moving down. There could be some kind of ecological disaster. I pick with Game of Thrones in terms of Volantis and the multiple volcanoes exploding and forcing people to leave. So there's a number of reasons why small populations to large populations would be forced, or at least choose to leave their homeland, in terms of world building. And if you really want to, instead of this just being the inciting event that causes the motivation, this thing could follow them to this new world, especially if it's something motivated by others that are just like the protagonist. So, for example, if the player characters and others are, yeah, invasion is another one where some form of otherworldly invasion, or maybe I guess you could consider a internal invasion. And when I say internal invasion, it could be from something that is animalistic and mindless, like insects, beetles, something living, but it's overrunning your location and you just got to get out. Or it could be an invasion from another earthly species. We talk about fantasy games in far future. Maybe they're just another group, like, we take our classic orcs and they're just overrunning the countryside, as a parallel to, I don't know, Vikings coming down from the north into the Euro theater or something, and everyone's like, I'm getting the heck up out of here. I'm going to cross that vast ocean. They claim there's another land, and I'm out. That invasion could be from something humanity did on their own. Maybe they opened up a portal somewhere and should have never done that. Maybe a a wizard's coven or something use magic to in an experimentation, and it summoned things that are just pouring through or whatever. Blue says, "Do you have a flag?" Well, you need a flag. No flag, no country. That's the rule that I just made up, and I'm backing it up with this gun. Yeah, I know you're picking Plur because you are the voice of the in this context of the old world, and we're the voice of the new. Yep, the weapon enforces the flag, enforces the nation, and that's you could also thinking holistically of this. Okay, the United States was built essentially on the gun. We don't have a history of the sword, of the blade, and um, yeah, get to the new world, and all of a sudden, all the alignment rules come into play. Poloratonia or Poloratoria is a strict place. Yeah, they're drinking tea the proper way. We will not do this. Yeah, we'll place coffee stands on every corner. Oh man, but yeah, there could be you could establish a new world based on a rather recent development of something, whether it is magic or firearms or I don't know, mind control or something, whereas the old world might have been built on um, older and more traditional methods of maybe it's war or combat or even violence resolution in things. So um, when people go to hey Infinite, what's going on? When people go to this new world, they start to create these new rules, or at least want to reject the old rules, even though everyone is quite aware of the old rules as well. Yeah, Josephina's like hormone monster voice. Kill the peasant. That's what your alignment would make you do. In the emperor's voice. I can feel your hate, your chaotic neutral. Yes, yes. Do something random. Do something that pisses off the DM. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, yeah. Happy Canadian Columbus Day Eve. Is that it? Um, but also as well, you know, the idea of so you've got this motivation. You leave the old world, leaving little breadcrumbs for in this setting to pull on later on, especially when there are government forces that want to pull on your desire and your loyalty, your honor to want to return to the old world, especially if this new world is very brutal. Lots of people did that. Back then, it wasn't very clean. People get to this new world and they realize that it's not the streets aren't paved in gold, that they might want to go back home, and there will definitely be factions that want to do that. They're going to be in people who are already in the world, in this new world, who want to keep the old rules going, maybe the old economic systems, the old nobility, and so you have that as well. And then when you get to this new world, and in our world building, um, there is the idea of inserting new encounters for the PCs so they always have something new to learn, and then make that completely consistent. Bestial Viking like orcs in the old world, maybe very tribalistic, um, one with nature orcs in the new world or something. Um, there's a cafe across the road from me in a building from before Columbus got lost. So yeah, I guess I'm in the old world, and that is the idea, right? Maybe in this new world there aren't. This would be kind of strange, and I know it would throw people off. But maybe there aren't old ruins and such. Maybe it isn't. It isn't the idea of building on top of the old world. Maybe everything the players do is brand new, and what a great way to thank your players for getting involved in your world, because maybe they are the progenitors of law and justice, and they write documents, and the player characters literally put their literal and figurative John Hancock on a document that starts to change this world. You could run very many parallels between how does a government run, what what laws would and wouldn't be just, in an old world maybe that those laws are perfectly fine, but in a new world they aren't. Much like the concept of the right to bear arms. Maybe in the old world, only those who were part of like a paladin's order or Templars or were military or whatever were allowed to have weapons. But in this new world, maybe everyone is trained, and everyone is it's almost required. Like, listen, we might not survive here, so we're going to make sure you're armed. Much like your classic elves. Elves have the racial bonus of being able to be skilled with proficiency with short and long bows and swords. Maybe there's a reason why. Yeah, Plura's like fake castles, which I think is so adorbs. Yeah, here in Ohio, there's quite a number of fake castles. Ravenwood is one that I'm still considering, at some point in the future, doing like a, a convention, a D&D in a castle kind of thing. Ravenwood is one. There's a number of them here in Ohio as well. There is Lindol's Mohican Castle. Um, yeah, and Joseph Keenan says there are ruins in the New World. The Mound Builders, the Olmec, the the Anasazi, etc. It's just different styles and cultures from the old world. I guess I was just making I was doing a, you're not going to see old rundown castles in the classic sense. But I absolutely agree with you that uh, I absolutely agree with you that the concept of dungeon delving, let's say, would be flipped on its head a little bit, and I kind of like that. Hell, I even wrote Plains and Grasslands as a almost as a challenge to make one of the most boring locations, at least in tabletop RPG parlance, to become more interesting. And I even wrote up a little blurb in there about how do you design an open air dungeon. It's basically you use wide open spaces and plains and things. You design it just like you would any dungeon, except it just doesn't have a roof on it and walls. It just has other barriers like rivers, streams, and hills, and thick foliage and things like that, and on a much larger scale as well. Um, and of course, Joseph Keenan says, and with Africa, you know, but mostly wood there, you need sat images for the foundations, probably of old structures and things like that. He says there's a castle up in Cleveland. Yep. Um, yep. Oh, thank you very much, Plura. I didn't. I never know if anyone's actually ever seen it. I've written it. I don't know if people are out there like actually looking at it or whatever. But it's kind of cool. Uh, Plura says on a kind of silly note, a lot of British roads are a mess of spaghetti. I gather in the U.S. there are a lot of grids in the cities. Grid building was a Ben Franklin thing, and while it does work because we have most of our grid cities run with a similar naming convention, um, but a lot of that stuff breaks down because we get a lot of 5 points, especially in big cities, where the grid work was never actually meant to connect to the other grid work that was very far away. But once you get automobiles, it just starts to spread around. Yep, 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 yep. Yes, like Scott Post says, yeah, usually in cities, yes, usually in older ones like New York City, we're actually fixed into grids over time. Like in from New Jersey, it's also spaghetti, but now in Arizona, which is gridded. And it depends on which came first, right? Did the people come first or the city planning come first? If the city planners like predicted, like they knew we were going to get a big population, you're going to see grid. If you if it's just people spreading out because they just felt like it, you're going to get a lot of spaghetti. You're going to get a lot of like why did the name of the street change for no good reason? Well, it's because one community grew so large it bumped up against the other community and they had to fix it. And yeah, and that's another thing too. Like the player characters could be again, we're talking about the the development of a new world that the players are in. Are they the ones that have created and are guarding the trade routes? Are they the ones that are watching over the fields and the harvest? Are they the ones that are helping to make treaties with the people that they've meet in this new place? I think that'd be really awesome because I think some players would, not every player, some players want to beat things about the head and shoulders, but for those players who really want to embrace legacy and embrace the idea that their very actions could lead to them either causing genocide or having statues built in their name. Yeah, I think I think that's awesome. And you could even go so far as to play the characters that are the descendants of the player characters. If they want to like retire their character, they could play their kids and grandkids and stuff, or play an apprentice that was to their own character. Yeah, it's like, yeah, there are roads here that change their names as many as 4 times, and you're like, why would you do that? But it's because there were 4 separate roads, most likely, 4 separate names, 4 separate roads. Never People in the past never thought they would even build a road that would connect that long, and then all of a sudden, there you go. Yep. And also there's topography as well. If you got a lot of like hills and mountains and valleys and high and low elevations, you got to like twist and turn roads around places that maybe people never thought they would even build a road through, and bridges and things that way. Yep. Yep. Then the highway system was developed. If I'm not mistaken, I believe it was copied off of um, the German infrastructure to land planes on it. Yeah, yeah. Like Joe's like, freak the roads, river and canals, baby. Yeah, there were a bunch of river pirates here up until the 1800s. Um, a lot of society to this day still builds near waterways, and for a very long time we used waterways to transport goods. I mean, how easy you know is it to do that? You take wood floats, you strap it together, you make a barge, you throw um, tons of crap on it, you float it up or down a river, and you're done. Very for low investment for high return for using waterways. Even till today, we use waterways for entertainment, for fishing, for travel and stuff. And until wagons and trains and things came along, waterways were always needed. And of course, water is life, right? So water puts out fires. You need water for drinking and food usage. You need water to clean and to wash away things. So, yep. Witches float. Um, I think they tried that experiment for to its brought to its lethal ends in the Salem witch trials, which was a confluence of things, which would be I like those events, like the Salem witch trials when it comes to like world building in this new world. It would be pretty interesting for the player characters to be like the strangely for them to be the moral center, and everybody else is just like these weird fanatical one-offs that the players are just like face palming, like, oh, do we have to fix this yet again? Are the you know are the fanatics getting out of hand? And like, yeah, they're starting to kidnap people and try to detect if they're witches. Yep, yep. The water must flow. Yeah, Joe Key says Great Lakes still has a lot of commerce, from fishing to ore to coal. I think lumber was used quite a bit throughout the Great Lakes, and there's also river cruising throughout the Great Lakes, where you can go from each one. Yep. Um, and then river piracy is yeah, like Scott Post says, river piracy is such a great idea. River piracy, if you if you're itching to add in an aquatic theme, but the rules and how they're used might be a little bit confusing, and you really don't want to do like a sunken Atlantis deep sea thing. River piracy would be great, because then you can kind of combine, it's like combining the best parts of piracy in a world without necessarily needing to make it call it pirates and just reskin pirates, right? um like Deadman says, the Mississippi has the river boats. You can have different, like small boats, small to larger boats, going up and down massive rivers in your world, or not even massive rivers, but there might be fingers of rivers all over. And then if the player characters are playing the pirates, or they don't have to be pirates, they can be, hell, they could be rebel forces or insurgents or law enforcers or something, that they travel on boats, come on shore, jump off the boats, do a ton of stuff on land to run back to the boats to escape down or upriver or something like that, which I think it's a great idea. You could even, it can be like a Navy SEALs kind of thing, where the PCs take their boats, have to hide them because they need them for a quick escape, but they have to be real quiet and sneak in the cover of night, and then sneak into cities, or just outside of a city's walls or defenses or something. Um, Camouflage their boats, and of course your adversaries might be doing the same things, and then you can have lots of defenses on the rivers, reskin those traps and environmental effects and things, where people are, dragging like ropes or spikes, or I don't know, even flaming oil across a river to try to prevent people from escaping, or whatnot. Yeah. Hell, towers, tall defensive towers to watch out for river pirates trying to come up and down their rivers, and fire at them with their crossbows and catapults and things while they're sailing up and down. And then of course you can have yourself, your river wars, people on boats and boarding each other on boats to steal their stuff, or just being in combat and everything. Yeah, I'm in. I'm already in. I'm Hell, that might even be next week's theme or something. Although I got to talking about teleportation beforehand, so I don't know. Whatever. Infinite Roleplays is powerful mages forging canals with their magic to extend the river pirates' reach. Ooh, um, artificially bending and twisting rivers, or druids causing places to flood so that they can be used as riverways. Maybe an entire part of the topography is nothing but filled with these small islands and rivers and deltas and stuff like that. That might be kind of cool. Um, Water was used to blast away rocks to get gold out, hydraulic mining. Ooh, you know what? Yeah, that is very true. Water was used to do that, and what a strange, somewhat industrialized, and I used industrialization loosely, because you could, there could be psionics, magic, whatever the case might be, of not only um, rivers that were forced into locations they shouldn't have been, but you could have um, dried up lakes and rivers where they've been dammed up to get down at the stuff that's in the bottom of them, and a combinations of all of them. I mean, why wouldn't, we think of dwarves as like mining under mountains, but what if there are river dwarves that are trying to get at the gold using water to blast away at the rock and stuff like that? I like that. Joseph Keenan says, have the large swamps with the river travel, great places to hide things, hideouts, run aground, etc. Yeah, you're hitting upon the thing that I'm almost finished. Wetlands, yeah, all the tall cattails and muddy ground, and swamps are actually great places for biological. It's good for biological life and to stop hurricanes. So getting rid of swamps isn't really a good idea, even though, you know, on its surface, swamps seem like they're kind of nasty, but I like it. Giant mangrove trees where the root systems are exposed, and being able to, like, they're so large you can like slip a dinghy in between the mangroves, and or the PCs have to like cover their faces with mud and hide, just being eye level inside the dark murky waters as they go through like the swamplands and stuff. I like that. Oh man, adding some river monsters to make falling overboard a bit more dangerous, hurting your hurting your than hurting yourself and getting your paper wet. Yeah. Oh, you have to have like somebody's ankle, a tentacled creature grab someone's ankle, or like piranhas or something like that. Hell, river snakes, water snakes that are extremely poisonous. You have to have leeches. You gotta add that kind of stuff, especially when it comes to like rivers and swamps and things like that. Yeah. And of course you have to have your river spirits, your water spirits too. You have woodland spirits. You got to have those in in there as well. Oh, thank you, Plur. Puts in the Wikipedia for hydraulic mining. Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Joe says they tried to drain a lake to get gold that was at the bottom. Could have a lot of problems with that and issues with that as well. Rivers were also used to power saws and sawmills. Yep, yes they were. Lots of mills were designed specifically on rivers to harness the power of the flowing water to turn whether it's like a stone mill or something like that inside. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yep, grinding wheat into flour. Absolutely. And protecting them, and well, finding the location, having it built, protecting it, and then harnessing the resources from it could all be on the player character's shoulders, or at least they are benefiting from it. And when something goes bad, to they have to put an end to the disruption, or the mill could be disrupting something else, you know, downstream or whatever. Yeah. The War of 1812 had a few battles for forts at the mouths of rivers. It was like controlling a highway back in the day. River and waterways were absolutely positively needed, and until they were able to come up with new, more efficient ways of travel. I'm with you on that. The idea of taking out a fort on the mouth of a river, you get to combine dungeon delving, castle sieging, aquatic travel, and the hazards thereof, um, all combined together. And I think that'd be great. That'd be sweet. Of course, a player would absolutely positively go, "Hey, can we swim into like this the underground waste or sewer system?" And you're like, "Hell yeah! Go ahead and go confront the Atiog that's down at the bottom eating the spillage of waste and feces and stuff." You gotta do that. Um, is Pillar says, so if you're making a new settlement, have your wood cutting upriver, float it down to the city where a sawmill cuts it into lumber. Keep your cattle downstream to not pollute the water. Um, Gold further down, agriculture, whatever, and then add owlbears when you're done. I like that. And I mean, okay, first of all, logically speaking, that is how rivers were used, right? You don't, like you said, you don't put your cattle upstream, you put it downstream so you don't pollute the water. But also, what a simple way to, what a simple linear method to establish a, we're talking tabletop RPGs, a linear method to establish what the PCs have to do. Okay, you're at the bottom of the river delta, and there's a fort there. Okay, and then you travel further upriver, and then that's where they have all the cattle on on the side, and then you go further upriver, and there's lumber mills, and you go further upriver again, and so what an easy, simple, logical, and efficient method to use a river, and of course the player characters might be involved in it. Maybe there's something, maybe they start at the very top of the river, and travel dozens or hundreds of, kilometers downstream to discover what it is that what the problem is, to begin with. Joseph Keenan says the Inca used different diameter pipes and channels to make their water supplies go uphill because of pressure, into what Pelora was saying. Yeah, aqueducts and being I completely forgot the ability to harness water from waterways to use it for agriculture itself by using pipes and channels and things like that to have it spill over into your whatever kind of fruits or vegetables that you're harvesting was a very, very interesting um, uh, development in human culture. And if you have a world with magic and psionics and stuff and alchemy and apothecaries and such, I'm sure somebody's going to say, yeah, I know you guys are out there blasting each other with fireballs, but yeah, we need water and food consistently. So yeah, no. Infinite says, what if the spirits of the old world were weakened with the increase of Western industrialization, and water spirits were, ooh, I didn't, come on, and water spirits were the first to die off after enslaving the elements to technology. Ow. Ow, I like that. As a matter of fact, Eberron kind of hints upon that. The world of Eberron, where they enslaved elemental spirits to have them power their airships and their lightning rails and stuff. And like you said, in the old world, if those spirits were weakened and they get to this new world and they use that, or maybe, just maybe, the old world was built on the enslavement of these spirits to the point that people kind of have almost forgotten that they were even alive to begin with. But in the new world, they are far more sentient. They have personalities. They are, elementally speaking, living, breathing, elemental things that can talk. They have just thoughts and desires. They have agendas. They want to live. And maybe the power of the old world's like, yeah, I get the idea that you want to hang out with your friends, but we really need our forges, so we're going to have to capture you, fire spirit, and throw you into the forge, because that's how we did it in the old world, and we're going to continue to do it this new way. And or you could go the opposite, and people stop honoring the spirits because they've learned how to start a fire on their own instead of asking the spirits of flame to help alight a forge. Maybe instead of asking the spirits of the winds to help them travel across vast seas and up and down rivers, they're like, you know what? We can make steam engines, or we can paddle our ways up and down, and just use the natural air with our sails and stuff. We don't need to ask the air spirits to help us out. And so maybe they desire to be like worshipped, or at least honored, or befriended or something. I like that idea. I like it a lot. Also, this because of this new world, as more and more people arrive, if they are still arriving from the old place they came from, they could be, very easily could be undermining the good works that the PCs are trying to do, or maybe the PCs are undermining the good works that other people are doing. And when I say good works, I don't necessarily mean that in a somewhat religious context, which could absolutely be there, but like industrialization, the building of roads, the building of homes and buildings for storage, and the building of bigger and larger and more efficient methods to maybe travel up and down those riverways. Someone decides, like, birds fly through the air. I wonder if we can make something that flies like a bird. And someone maybe starts to design like the very first hot air balloon or something, and it becomes the first airship and such. And then maybe the PCs are are there at ground zero for the first of nearly everything, and the problems that come, and also the problems that come about by doing it. Um, Infinite says, Infinite Roleplay says, the rise of the Wailing Army, a united nation of native warriors accompanying the old world water spirits like banshees, and all know that a banshee's wail predicts death. You know, it could be like you're saying, the native peoples in this new world, maybe they're trying to warn everybody by um, going to the leadership, and they're like, listen, we're begging you, please don't do this, because you're causing more harm than good. And they're like, nah, we're just going to ignore you. And then, like you said, you start having a banshee problem when the native peoples are outside, wailing and performing rituals that the people from the old world don't understand. Yeah. Oh man. It could be also when it comes to, we often talk about old world, new world when it seems as if this undiscovered country, there are people here that are, shall we say, uh, more naturalistic. They live in and amongst the land and such. And you don't, while you can do it that way, it's not necessary that you need to have it done that way. For example, there's no reason why the player characters couldn't arrive at a far distant nation that is as advanced or more advanced technologically and culturally as they see themselves, right? So you don't. While it's a good trope to have like a native peoples and they're tribalistic and stuff, you don't have to do that. Now, if you are going to do that, it behooves us do not fall into stereotypes, or at least if you're going to use stereotypes, also go out of your way to not use stereotypes, right? Stereotypes come about because at some point in time there is a truism to it, but at the same time it is also not emblematic of, it is not a description of everyone all the time. So the native savages that the native savages are out there scalping our heads out there in the wild. Sure, there might be a group like that. It could be a misinterpretation. um, Maybe they've been hired to pretend to be that way by um, by the people who have already arrived from the old world, making a deal with the new people, shaking hands like, listen, neither of us like each other, so let's work together so that we go home and you guys have your native world. And they're like, you know what, that's a great idea. Yeah. I didn't know that was a thing. Roddenberry up your stereotypes. I didn't know that was a thing. Hmm. Yeah, get a little t-shirt. I'm gonna Roddenberry up my game. Um, but yeah, you could do that, and you could actually, just using the stereotype to good effect. You could have these quote unquote native savages pretending to be the savages that everyone thinks that they fear because they've been hired to do it, and they're just like, they go back home and they just take the paint off, and they're like, I hope that worked, because yeah, I think they were scared. And and of course, for the ones who embrace the stereotypes, sometimes there is an embracement of stereotypes, because it's like, if I'm going to feel the sin, if I'm going to feel the punishment, I might as well commit the sin, kind of thing. So, um, yep, absolutely. Like Dead Man says, the Native American scalping people was adopted by the Native American warriors working on a bounty system with the French. And so, again, that wasn't something they decided to, I mean, sorry, they did decide to do it. It wasn't something that was part of their culture. It was actually created as a bounty system by the French invaders who wanted them to do it, and then they were paid on the scalps they took, and then word spread and yada yada yada, right? So yeah, you could have this fear of the quote unquote native savages out there in the wild, but really they were actually created by your own people to to be to be the savage that you think that they are in the first place. And like Blur says, damn French. Although you're a little closer to the French, I believe, than the rest of us are. But you get the point, right? You can play with that and then destroy the stereotype. Like, wait, what? Wait, we are paying them to be the savages that we're trying to hunt in the first place? Like, wait a minute, maybe we need to work with them so they aren't like, so they don't have to do that. And then maybe the player characters end up fighting against their own cultural standards because they realize that they've been lied to this entire time, which I think that's great. I think that's awesome. Um, Also, much like Infinite Roleplay talks about the old spirits and such, maybe, just maybe, this is a great way for you as the world builder to layer lots of detail into this naturalistic world, and maybe your player characters no, not your player characters, maybe your players have very little knowledge of this new world, and so they play characters who equally do not have a lot of information about this new world, and little by little they start shedding the old tropes and ways. They start shedding their old clothing and walking barefoot and using mark you know body markings and things like that, learning new methods because the old methods aren't as effective. And it would be pretty interesting narratively to say, your wizard comes over to this new world, right? And he's got the spell book, got the wizard's cap, the whole 9 yards, the robe with the star and moon on it and whatever, got the whole 9 yards, okay? And the native peoples have their own magic, and in order for the wizard to learn, because you could even divide up the spell choices, right? In order for the wizard to learn these new spells, you have to do it the way they do it. They're going to teach you, so you're going to have to do it the way they do it. And no, you can't write it in a spell book. It's verbiage, it's tattoos, it's beseeching the spirits and such. And maybe this wizard from the old world is being cast out by his own kind for even giving even giving credence, giving legitimacy to this native type of magic. And that could just be a narrative thing, right? Um, when the tribal people who live in this new world cast a fireball, maybe it looks and acts and comes about in a far different way than how this wizard does the same thing. Or maybe only one side has one and the other side only has one other type of spell, whatever the case may be, right? You can divide it up gaming wise and whatnot. Also, with world building, much like there was a TV show, short-lived, I think 3 seasons maybe, and a movie called Deadwood. And in it, as the show aired, little by little, the town was getting bigger. More people were moving in. A person who owned the one single tavern in town, all of a sudden another one springs up, and it becomes a rivalry. There are people who are there for the gold rush, and that gold rush could be any kind of the gold rush could be any kind of rush, whatever resources are out there. And maybe there's a place where the city is literally growing and expanding and dying off and burning and being overrun by criminal organizations and religious organizations, and government agents are coming into the town periodically, so that you could have a small map that just keeps growing and growing, in and around the PCs literally as they sleep. And I like the idea of a living world where, not world, but I mean, yes, a living world, but like a living city or living community that keeps moving and shifting and changing, especially if it's based on what the PCs do or don't do. Um, it's a juggling. How do you juggle keeping the place safe, making sure resources come in, keeping track of all the visitors that are coming from from the old world, keeping track of the new world tribalists that are coming to the town to parlay or maybe even integrate themselves into this place. I like that. Pelora says there's a game called Malifaux or Malifaux, which is essentially Earth in the 1890s, with a portal to Malifaux where magic is real. Their major export is soulstones, which allows magic on Earth. I did not know that. Thank you, Dead Man. Yeah, Deadwood the movie and Deadwood the TV series. And while it could be a little bit difficult to of course make a multi-staged map, maybe, just maybe, you could leave it open and let the player characters add things to the map, small buildings and pathways, and as like most major cities, city a cemetery is built far away. Malifaux, that's what I was thinking, Malifaux instead of Malifax, because it's a F-A-U-X, not F-A-X. And I don't, maybe I'm putting the incorrect emphasis on the wrong syllable. It's possible as well. um, what else do we have? We also have with world building the okay. The Thanksgiving holiday is a celebration of the mal if o. Hmm. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. The Thanksgiving holiday is built around the celebration of the harvest and the surviving the basically the whoo our our fields are great. We know we have food, we have shelter, we are going to survive. And so um and it's possible that this celebration brings about a community, a collection of people, both old and new world, that are like, you know what? Thanks for helping us survive, and so let's embrace the good part of it, okay? Now, all of a sudden, you start having there are factions both from the tribal side and the come from another world side that might be looking at this combined group as if to say, I don't. There's something about this that isn't right. You're shaking hands with people who maybe don't look like you or act like you or have your language or have your culture or claim that certain things are very important to us that aren't important to them, and and the idea of doing that itself may be extremely. It's like um, it's trying to convince the other people that in the community that they should embrace this new way of thinking, and that's a fight that you can't win with a blade or sword. That's a fight that you're not going to win by hitting people upon the head and shoulders unless you want to become like some sort of dictator or whatnot. And who knows, who's to say that there isn't something, a danger bigger and better on the horizon, much like when people got here, you know, hurricane. Let's bring up something, a danger here in the States that people from outside wouldn't think of. We have hurricane season throughout the Midwest, and the hurricanes come across off the shores of Africa, sweep across the Atlantic, go through the Caribbean region, and then start to spill up north. Now, if you aren't from a region that has hurricanes, you wouldn't know about that. Same thing with brutal winters or windstorms and torrential rains and all those kind of things. So, turning the volume up, much like Pelora's brings up the Malifaux and the soul stones and such, there is how we don't know how the arcane powers work in this new world, and that in and of itself could be a great way to study, a great way for the PCs to study how does magic work here, what resource can we acquire to mitigate the randomness of it, especially if you have like some weird form of like chaos magic, and that people from the old world, when they come here, it's almost all chaotic and strange, and it has strange weird side effects and such until they learn to blend with this naturalistic spiritual world or something. I could see that. You could even ban certain types of character classes or concepts, um, or you can pick an old character class concept, but it's reframed in a new way when you get here, which might be kind of cool. Pelora says if you have a precious a resource like gold, soul stones, whatever, you're going to have theft, either workers pocketing some of it or the transports being attacked. Of course, you're going to have theft, bribery. You're going to have threats. There might be even the people who are left out of the economic resources of that are going to be, they're going to feel threatened, and they themselves might even try to destroy the resources if they aren't brought into it. Of course, you're going to have people who make up fake taxes. Well, you owe a little bit to the crown. You owe some to the Merchants Guild. You're mining this material. You're taking this material from land. By the way, I've got a piece of paper that says this land is owned by so and so, and you're like, wait a minute, do it. No one owns this land yet at all. Like, well, I've got a piece of paper, and everyone else is saying that so and so owns, 800 acres or whatever your measurement is, and you're mining, and so in perpetuity you owe this person a portion of your resources, and et cetera, right? And then of course, extracting those resources, where are they coming from? Is it harming something in the environment at all? Because if it's harming something, it could be throwing off the natural life cycle or migration of a certain type of animal. It could be offending some kind of spiritual or elemental beings. Maybe the native peoples are just straight up like, yeah, we're asking you to stop doing that. And you're like, well, why? Because those precious stones belong in the ground, and we extract one or two maybe a year during the solstice, and that's it. And everyone's like, yeah, but you can reach the ground and get like 50 of them. I don't understand. Like, it's not for you to understand. Put it back in the ground and go away before I draw my weapon and kill you. You know what I mean? Plur says, I wonder if it would be worth delving into things like the Chinese and Irish rail workers. It's a delicate subject, though, of which I have dangerously little knowledge. I'm the same way, but yes, much talking specifically about the States, much of the States was built on the backs of yet another ethnic group brought to this country to help build its industry. Yeah, I'm looking past you, African slaves, into Chinese and Irish and Italian and et cetera, right? Like each new group that comes over. Yeah, Joseph Key said, yeah, you kill off the major food source for your own hometown. I'm sure that's happened plenty of times. As a matter of fact, even, um, come on, Tesla, dead man. What was the Black Blizzard? Um, people people who wanted to settle the Midwest ended up taking, I believe it was wheat, and planting the wheat into the ground, and come to find out that by planting it in the ground, it it absorbed all the nutrients and did not replace the nutrients, and then the soil became, since it wasn't soft anymore, it wasn't moist, it didn't hold nutrients, it became dust. And then that dust started blowing so badly because of the sweeping winds that come across the Midwest that it was killing people. Yep, there it is, Black Sunday, the Black Sunday storm. Yep. Um, so, yes, that Was that corn, Boffin? Thank you. There was the plant before people who came here understood about revolving a harvest. Like you plant one food and then another food and then another food, and then each, as you revolve through your crop, you replace it with a different planting so that it revolves the nutrients through it. And mind you, I'm just bringing it off the top of my head. This isn't a fact, but it would be the equivalent of like planting corn and then like wheat and then potatoes and then pumpkins and then strawberries. Like you revolve through them and then go back through that cycle again. And the that skill had to be learned because the old ways work perfectly fine. You get here and it starts to kill people. Crop rotation. Thank you very much, Plur. Balfour says the Scandinavians brought over corn. Tesla says, quote, cattle farming and sheep ranching had left much of the West devoid of natural grass and shrubs to anchor the soil, and over-farming and poor soil stewardship left the soil dehydrated and lacking in organic matter. During a massive drought that hit in the United States in the 1930s, the lack of rainfall, snowfall, and moisture in the air dried out the topsoil in most of the country's farming regions. Now, okay, and I'm not getting on a soapbox here, but because you know me, this has to do with tabletop gaming. This event was basically an ecological disaster that literally killed people. People were suffering from I mean, not only did you not have food to eat, and not only were there like essentially these black windstorms that swept through the land, people were dying from lung infections, and of course the fines, the dust in the air, were killing children and elderly and sensitive peoples easily. And of course, your immune system's down because you're not eating food that you don't have much food to eat, and you're out there farming. This was simply done by accident. Hey, we've got animals, we're planting crops, let's go ahead and do this. So, not putting down the deaths of the people that, did this by accident, who is to say that in our new world that the old ways of doing things, and very simple things to do, planting crops, what are some simple things to do? The building of structures and just traveling across the land could have very significant effects in a new world when you're unsure of or lacking knowledge, or maybe there's even a little bit of arrogance involved in it, where of course this is going to work, and the native peoples are like, that's not going to, you can't, don't do that, don't plant that. What do you mean don't plant it? We ate this, we ate rhubarbs and cabbages back in our old country. I don't know why it wouldn't work here. Yeah, Joseph Keenan says Ken Burns has a good documentary on the Dust Bowl. And who's to say that those things, the player characters aren't literally at ground zero when this thing happens, when the native peoples are shaking their heads like, listen, you don't want to do this because it's going to cause this problem. It's sure, yes, it worked in your old world, but it's not going to work here. And when it happens, the player characters are like face palming, like, oh, they went and did it anyway. And yeah, I mean, turn the volume up to 11. Who's to say that the black, this Black Sunday isn't a living elemental thing that comes upon the land because of the improper use of the land itself, and look at how much of a huge swath of the world it covered. This wasn't an ogre stomping through someone's village. This is something that stretched miles and miles, tens of miles through, I mean, it killed off. Yeah, Tesla's like, ooh, those crazy foreigners. Yep. So now you could get really complicated by literally having a side effect of doing everything. You might not want to do that and go all crazy with it, but having a few of these self-made ecological problems happen, I think is a good way to remind people, and even the player characters, like, listen, you don't want to go out there and do things the old way. yeah, remember that magic missile spell you cast? Well, it comes from somewhere, and every time you do that, every time you cast that fireball, you're like opening a portal to the elemental plane of fire. And they're like, no, we're not. We've been throwing fireballs out of sailing ships for years, and like, no, that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, Scott Post is hunting, egg eating. Uh, yep, egg eating rats stowing away and domestic animals escaping all screwed up the local ecosystems. They sure did. Um, Hell, bringing over chickens and pigs and rats and things like that did change it up. But anyway, guys, we've come upon the hour mark. Um, want to need to get out of here. Want to say goodbye to the wife and stuff. Tomorrow there will be a show very early tomorrow. So guys, I want to thank you guys for joining me. Everyone have a great holiday if you are not participating, but I'll always be here. Guys, have a really great one. For those who don't celebrate Thanksgiving, we will be doing that here. So be aware that other people you might be engaging with might also be have issues with their family and friends gathering together. So, guys, have a great one. I will see you later. Bye.